Hello everyone, my name is Sean and welcome back to In the Black. This is the place where we try to help you stay current and keep both your personal and career capital out of the red and... Okay, now let's head on down that old rabbit hole together. Today, we're going to cover one of the least understood elements of commercial real estate in New York City, from my perspective. Particularly by those wet behind the ear rookies, which may just result in you never wanting to ever leave your home office or give up those patterned pajamas and comfy slippers ever again. All right, so here it is. Are you ready?
Wait for it. Wait for it. Wait for it. Here it comes. Almost there.
Rentable square feet are not measurable. Okay, fine. I've just let the cat out of the bag, so let's now dive and get into it. As you may know, there is a familiar concern out there that questions whether the amount of square feet a company pays for when they lease office space in New York City reflects the accurate amount of space that is delivered by a commercial landlord. And the answer to the question is, like many other things in life, it really depends. And it depends primarily on just how square feet is ultimately defined. By and large, those who get disturbed by this issue just don't completely appreciate how rentable square feet is customarily determined for office space, particularly in the Big Apple. You see, in this city, there are in fact some things out there that are not measurable, like the amount of rentable square feet a company leases, or the amount of ice cream I can personally consume in a single sitting. But let me start to clear up what might appear to be otherwise a little confusing by explaining that what in fact is measurable is the gross square footage, usable square footage, and plannable square footage of office space. However, rather than snore you to death with the definitions related to each of these square foot scenarios, and particularly the methodology used to arrive at their respective amounts, let's just say that the friction caused by disputes over spatial size is primarily a result of intentionally poor terminology, which does tend to benefit a landlord more than it does a tenant. Although rentable square feet may sound similar to gross square feet, usable square feet, and plannable square feet, the manner in which you arrive at rentable square feet is determined not by actually measuring space, but by a market-driven mathematical equation, which is more about two things. One, landlords keeping in line with how similar competitive properties are calculating their available space, and two, what tenants in the market will actually accept or bear before taking up arms and storming the castle. Just remember, it is inherent in their name. Landlord.
You don't have to raise your voice.
They are the lords who reign over the estate, and yes, every corporate tenant has a good relationship with their landlord. So long as they pay the rent on time, of course.
I'm not doing so good, Pearl.
I put you on the street.
Pearl. But again, I digress. In order to arrive at a rentable square foot number, the usable square feet has to first be established first and foremost. And this amount is objectively measurable by an agreed upon industry standard provided by no other than the Real Estate Board of New York, who, by the way, do not provide guidance or enforce how rentable square feet is determined. And as some might otherwise have you believe, New York landlords are not, I repeat, not adding portions of their lobby into these calculations or measurements. What actually happens may seem to be far more diabolical. So let me share how the process works. A practitioner, namely an architect, would first measure from the outside wall to the outside wall of the exterior of an office building to establish gross square footage of a floor. Next, those areas within that particular floor that possess vertical protrusions or that are shared by more than one floor are subtracted from this gross square footage amount. For example, we would subtract the area amounts attributable to shaft space, risers, fire stairs, elevators, which are all vertical protrusions that extend between the floors, as well as mechanical rooms or any other rooms in areas shared by and between the floors. After applying these deductions to the gross square footage amount, the end result will provide a defendable usable square foot amount. Now again, don't be fooled by the terminology here. I know it sounds misleading, and some might say it actually is. Just because we refer to it as usable doesn't mean the area can actually be quote unquote usable by the tenant. That would be crazy, eh? Case in point, columns are not deductible, even though they are technically vertical protrusions, right? Building mechanical rooms servicing the floor in question are also not deductible, even though they too are not typically usable by the tenant on the floor. But let me not get too nerdy and bogged down here. Once the usable square footage has been attained, the next step is fairly straightforward, and this is where the mathematical equation I mentioned earlier gets a tad bit arbitrary in terms of what the market, meaning tenants, will accept. Many of you may be familiar with the fact that New York City office buildings typically carry what's called a loss factor. And the typical loss factor on a full floor is 27%. Now, in order to arrive at the rentable amount of a floor from usable, as mentioned earlier, we would subtract the 27% loss factor from the whole number 1, and we would arrive at 0.73. Now, this is where the magic really shines through, so watch this. Let's assume we have 10,000 square feet of usable space. In order to find the rentable, we would divide the 10,000 usable number by 0.73. Then wave our magic wands to reveal an increase in size of the floor to 13,669 rentable square feet. Congratulations, you're now a true industry wizard and have learned how to perform real estate alchemy by mathematically calculating the amount of rentable square feet on a full floor in Manhattan. Congratulations. Now, by the way, the inverse is required to go backwards from rentable square feet to usable square feet. All that you need to know is the rentable amount and the loss factor. In this scenario, to get back to usable, we take 13,669 rentable square feet and multiply it by 27. The result is 3,699 square feet. Subtract 3,699 from 13,669 and voila, we arrive at 10,000 usable square feet. Pretty cool, eh? Am I boring you yet? If so, just wait till I tell you about divided floors. It gets super juicy here as loss factors typically jump to the mid 30 percentile range and can skyrocket to as high as 41% in some buildings actually. It's important to note that it is not, I repeat, it is not customary for ground floor or basement space to have a loss factor, and those spaces should always be quoted in usable square foot numbers. But whether in the office floors or the ground floors, columns should never be deducted from the usable amount, and you will for sure end up paying for the usable space the columns take up, even though the area they consume is not deemed to be usable. The most important takeaway is that in any negotiations with a landlord, a tenant or their advisors should always understand and be able to clearly explain the methodology used to measure the space, reserve the right to verify the measurement at any time before a lease is signed, and be willing to negotiate any discrepancies, since the space can always be deemed to be whatever the parties agree to. So that's a wrap for today. Let us know what you think down below, and please don't forget to tap the like button, hit subscribe, and leave a comment if there's anything about this topic you would like us to illuminate on. Thanks again. I'm Sean, and this was In the Black. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you next time.